Part 22. Pirate's Bounty Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 223. Key Robin was stunned for a moment. Can you say? The purpose of your coming here is nothing more than that mermaid. I went to the backstage of the auction before, took a look at her, and took her by the way. Logo smiled slightly. How about it? As a partner, I don't just care about history and articles. Are you very happy? Robin was speechless for a while, and finally sighed, I really should thank you. Not to mention the strip, the previous Judiciary Island is being updated. Please refresh and visit later. This chapter is working hard to updating, please refresh to visit later. Handsome guys and beautiful women who visit on mobile phones, please register as a member first. Register as a member of the site and use the bookshelf bookmark function for more convenient reading. If this chapter is nonsense like the author asking for tickets, please skip to the next chapter. Please bookmark this page first, so that you can read it later, otherwise you won't find this chapter later. Recommended author, Lin Yujianjian urban novel, The Best Son-in-Law Lin Yujianjian. https 3a2f2f.2f182f1828992f. Brief introduction. When the master was leaving, he left Wen Tian a life-saving mantra that we kept at the bottom of the box, saying that if you practice diligently, you will have miraculous results. P.S. All the spells, Taoist formulas, secret techniques, etc. in this book come from our secrets. If you don't know the truth, don't practice it on your own. Remember to be cautious. E3808069C80E4BDB3E5A5B3E5A969E97E7 BEB6B19F9A2997AAT59CB0E59D80F9APS 3A2F2F2F2F1A2F1A28992F0A0AE380880E3808080 https 3A2F2F2F1A2F1A28992F0A0AE380880E3808038E38085E5E9E8F9APS 3A2F2F2F182F1828992F134268447.ht. Chapter 1 Witnessing Yourself Being Cremated. I'm sorry, we've done our best, let's prepare for the funeral. The doctor's voice outside the ward was very soft, but Lin Yu on the hospital bed could hear it clearly. Maybe even the hearing becomes extra sensitive before death, especially the mother's cry, which is particularly sharp. Lin Yu was not the first because he sacrificed his life for righteousness. He didn't regret it, but felt sorry for his mother. His father died early, and his mother dragged him with his own hands. I don't know how much he suffered. Now he is admitted to the Qinghai City People's Hospital with excellent grades. Damn it! A good man really has no good reward, Lin Yu cursed in a low voice, his eyelids could no longer hold, and he slowly closed. My son! A shrill cry suddenly woke Lin Yu up. He opened his eyes and saw that he was standing at the end of the bed at this time, while his mother was crying on the bed. Mom, why are you crying? Am I here in a bad way? Lin Yu was overjoyed, thinking that he had recovered miraculously, reached out and patted his mother, and found that his hand had actually passed through his mother's body. The mother didn't respond in the slightest, and still threw herself on the bed and cried. Lin Yu's expression changed, and when he looked up, he saw himself lying on the bed, his face was dry and blue, and he was obviously out of anger. I'm dead. Lin Yu looked down at himself standing at the end of the bed, and found that his body was a little white and slightly transparent. Lin Yu was shocked. It turns out that people really have souls after death. No matter what he said or did, my mother couldn't feel it. With the help of the nurse, the mother reluctantly put on Lin Yu's shroud, and then the nurse transported his body to the funeral car. His mother got into the car and sat next to his body, holding his hand tightly. Tears kept pouring out of her red and swollen eye sockets. Don't worry. Mom has finished the things here. I'll go down and accompany you immediately. For her, her son is everything to her. When her son dies, her life in the world has no meaning. Hearing that his mother wanted to seek short-term reunion, Lin Yu was in a hurry, and lay down on the corpse like the scene of the revival in the movie, but it didn't work. Every time he sat up, only his soul was left. The car quickly arrived at the crematorium. After paying the fee, the staff simply put on makeup for Lin Yu and handed Lin Yu's mother a number plate. Then the incinerator pushed Lin Yu's body to the incineration hall. Do not. When the incinerator pushed his body into the incinerator, Lin Yu collapsed instantly. With the burning of his body, Lin Yu felt that his consciousness was weakening, and there were countless faint light spots scattered around his body, and his soul was slowly fading. At the same time, another world began to flash in front of his eyes, and all he could see was endless darkness, mixed with red flames and shrill screams. Hell! This was the first thought that flashed through Lin Yu's consciousness, and a strong sense of fear engulfed him instantly. His soul subconsciously rammed in the air, and the light spots were still floating out of his soul body, and the speed was getting faster and faster. The hell world in his eyes became clearer and clearer, and he could hear a mysterious hoarse voice calling him below. At this time, Lin Yu's body in the incinerator was almost burned out, and a jasper-colored pendant in the ashes suddenly glowed dazzlingly in the fire. This was left to him by his grandfather Lin Yu when he passed away. Since he was a child, his mother did not take it off when he wore the shroud. The light of the pendant became brighter and brighter, and then it burst with a bang. A ray of green light suddenly burst out of the pendant and attached to Lin Yu's soul. Immediately afterwards, an old voice came from his mind, "I am the saint of your ancestors. From today onwards, you will be my descendant. You will be my heir to the Tao, hang the pot to help the world, and save yourself." Then the voice dissipated, and a huge amount of information suddenly flooded into Lin Yu's mind. Medical Taoism, mysticism of practice, and some travel experiences of ancestors poured into Lin Yu's mind. With the information in his mind, Lin Yu felt very excited, as if he had opened the door to a new world. But this excitement is fleeting. What is the use of getting the inheritance of the secret technique? He is already a dead person who is about to go to hell. This thought flashed by, and a memory about rejuvenation suddenly popped into Lin Yu's mind. Memory shows that through reincarnation, people whose souls are not scattered after death can be reborn. However, Lin Yu's body had been reduced to ashes in the fire, but fortunately, there is a record of the method of reviving the damaged body. The body is destroyed, turned into a ghost, found, and then attached to it. Lin Yu sucked in a breath of cold air, meaning that his body was damaged, and if he wanted to be resurrected, he could only turn into a ghost through reincarnation and find someone else's body to possess. You must know that in human consciousness, ghosts are the incarnation of evil. Besides, if you get on someone else's body, isn't it equivalent to depriving someone else's life in disguise? After hesitating, Lin Yu's soul became weaker and weaker, only a phantom remained, and the voice in his ears became clearer and clearer. Lin Yu gritted his teeth, looked at the corpses being pushed into the incineration hall one after another, and suddenly came up with an idea: if the dead can't do it, then the living dead should be okay. A few minutes later, Lin Yu came to the largest vegetative care center in Qinghai City. Many vegetative people are unconscious and can't wake up all their lives. They only have their bodies alive. Lin Yu believes that choosing such a person to possess them is not considered murder. At first, Lin Yu went from ward to ward, looking for a suitable body. But I found that my consciousness is getting weaker and weaker, and it will soon disappear, and the call from hell is getting more and more urgent. Lin Yu didn't have time to think about it. He looked at a male vegetative person in his 20s, and when he remembered the revival technique, he suddenly turned into a plume of white smoke, and he crawled in without hesitation. You can't escape. At the same time, the call in his ear suddenly turned into a shrill scream, and then Lin Yu lost all consciousness. When Lin Yu woke up again, he only felt the glare of the glare, and it took a while to get used to it. Looking down, he was lying in the ward. Successful. Lin Yu almost cried out in excitement, sat up suddenly, glanced at his new body, couldn't wait to tear off the needle in his hand, and then jumped out of the bed, but as soon as his feet fell, his body staggered and fell to the ground. Maybe because of lying down for a long time, the muscles of this young man were slightly atrophied. Lin Yu staggered to get up, looked up at the calendar on the wall, and found that it was the second day. He touched the bed and the wall, and felt the cold temperature from his hands. It felt like a dream. Thinking of being resurrected today. After a little movement, he got used to this new body, and then he couldn't wait to rush out of the hospital. The only thing on his mind now was to see his mother. The fastest update on the internet. Mobile version, HTTPS. At this time, the bun shop was crowded with people, and more than a dozen gangsters clamored for Lin Yu's mother to pay back the money. In order to perform surgery on Lin Yu's mother was forced to borrow hundreds of thousands in loan sharks. When they learned that Lin Yu was dead, the gangsters came to collect the debt impatiently. "Don't worry, I sold the store in a few days, and I will return the money to you. Please leave first." Lin Yu's mother pleaded with red and swollen eyes, hoping to send them away as soon as possible. Her son had just left, and she didn't want him to leave peacefully. This rundown store of yours is only worth a few bucks. Your son is dead. Once we leave, if you run away, we don't care who gets the money, the leader of the yellow-haired gangster cursed. "Don't worry, I will definitely not run away. I will collect enough money and return it to you right away. No matter what we say today, we will still get the money," Huang Mao refused. "But I really have no money now. As you know, all the money has been spent on treating my son." Lin Yu's mother's heart was cut like a knife, and there was a hint of pleading in her hoarse voice. "It's okay if you don't have any money, so let's do it. You can transfer your dilapidated house to us, and you will pay the debt." Huang Mao rolled his eyes and said his true purpose. Lin Yu's mother was slightly startled. The house was left by Lin Yu's grandfather. Although it was a bit old, it was in a good location. According to the current house price in Shanghai, it could be sold for at least 2 to 3 million. They were simply robbing it. Computer version with the fastest network update. But now that his son is dead and his home is gone, what's the point of keeping the house? After paying off the debt, he can go home in peace. Thinking of this, Lin Yu's mother nodded in despair. Just as she was about to agree, an angry shout suddenly came from outside the door. "No, our house is worth at least a few million. This is robbery." Then Lin Yu rushed in with his new body in full force. "Yeah, where did that bastard come from? It's none of your business." Huang Mao was furious. Looking at Lin Yu's hospital gown, he thought it was a lunatic who had escaped from somewhere, so he rushed over and slapped him with his hand. Lin Yu ducked subconsciously, stretched out his hand and pushed it. Huang Mao flew out in an instant, flying a full 5 or 6 meters, crossed an arc in the air, and slammed onto the table inside. "Let me kill him." Huang Mao covered his chest and screamed twice, and then gave an order, and a dozen other gangsters rushed up immediately, surrounded Lin Yu with punches and kicks, and Lin Yu quickly raised his hand to fight back. Then there was a wailing sound in the steamed bun shop, and the little gangsters screamed again and again. More than a dozen of them went up together, and they didn't even touch the corner of Lin Yu's clothes, and Lin Yu's fists and feet hit them as if they were hit by a car. With just one punch, they couldn't get up from the pain. Lin Yu himself was extremely shocked. They all said that ghosts were extremely powerful, but he didn't expect it to be true. Moreover, in his eyes, these people's movements seemed very slow and easy to avoid. Alarm! Alarm! Huang Mao was terrified by the scene in front of him. He had seen someone who could fight, but he had never seen someone who could fight like this. He was simply inhuman. As soon as she heard that the police was going to be called, Lin Yu's mother hurried over and grabbed Lin Yu's hand, and said anxiously, "Lady, they are going to call the police, go away, I'll deal with it here." "Mom, what did you say? How can I leave you?" Lin Yu was about to burst into tears with joy, and it was great to see his mother alive. Hearing his name, his mother was slightly startled and looked at him blankly. Looking into his mother's eyes, Lin Yu suddenly realized that he was alive, but in a different body, and his mother didn't recognize him at all. "I'm sorry, Auntie, I think of my mother when I see you, so I can't help but blurt out, 'Don't mind.'" Lin Yu hurriedly made up a nonsense for fear of frightening his mother by revealing his true identity. "It's okay, boy, let's go quickly. Our family's affairs can't affect you," Lin Yu's mother said while pushing him out. Lin Yu didn't answer, he touched the chopsticks on the table and threw them. The chopsticks quickly shot at Huang Mao, and with a bang, he pinned Huang Mao's phone that had just pressed 110 to the wall. Huang Mao's face turned pale with fright. The chopsticks on the wall were only 1 centimeter away from his ears. If there was a slight deviation, his head would be nailed to the wall. "Help, kill, help," Huang Mao screamed in fright, the grievance that could not be expressed in his voice. It was obvious that they owed him money first. "Stop shouting, I will pay back the money for Aunt Qin." Lin Yu said coldly that since he was resurrected, he should pay these debts by himself. "Young man, how can this be done? This is the first time you and I have met, how can I let you pay back the money for me?" Lin Yu's mother looked at Lin Yu with some doubts. For some reason, this young man gave her a feeling of déjà vu. She was not surprised that Lin Yu knew her surname. Many netizens knew about her son's courage to sacrifice his life for righteousness. Her name and contact information were also taken away. Many well-meaning people came to see her son off, but she refused. "Okay, that's what you said, then give us the money." Huang Mao doesn't care why Lin Yu pays the money for others, as long as he can get the money, his task is complete. "Give me 3 days," Lin Yu said. Huang Mao was a little speechless. He said it so arrogantly that he thought he would be able to take out the money immediately. "Why don't you believe me?" Seeing that Huang Mao didn't speak, Lin Yu frowned and his tone was a little cold. Believe it, but brother, you have to tell me your name." Looking at Lin Yu's cold eyes, Huang Mao couldn't help shivering. "Name? Yes, I was in such a hurry this morning that I didn't even have time to read this person's name. Don't worry, I will do what I promised you. In this way, 3 days later, you will still be here. Just come here, and I will return the money to you when the time comes." The reason why Lin Yu is so confident is all because of his body. He thought that since he could live in a daycare center, no matter how ordinary this young man's family was, he could at least get a dozen or 200,000 out of it. He would use it first, and then pay it back when he made money. Having seen Lin Yu's skills, Huang Mao didn't dare to say anything more. He was about to nod in agreement when he suddenly looked outside the store in a daze, as if he was attracted by something. New Beihai Chinese website first released. Lin Yu also followed curiously and looked out, only to see a red BMW X5 came to the door at some point. As soon as the door opened, he stepped out with fair and slender legs, and then got out of the car, a tall man dressed in white beauty in simian dress. Book 1818289. The beauty in the long skirt brushed her long black hair and took off her sunglasses. Her fair skin and delicate face were so shocking that Huang Mao and his subordinates were stunned. Lin Yu couldn't help being attracted too. The beauty and temperament of this beauty are indeed top-notch. The beauty in the long skirt looked up at Beyazipu, frowned slightly, and walked in quickly. Book 1818289. Beauty, do you want to buy buns? What stuffing do you want? Lin Yu couldn't help but blurt out that he used to help his mother sell steamed buns, and it has become a conditioned reflex to see people like this. "What did you call me?" The beauty in the long skirt glanced at him coldly, her tone displeased. "Beauty." Lin Yu felt that his name was fine, so he couldn't help but be a little puzzled. The first time he saw a beautiful woman, he still didn't want to hear it. The beautiful woman in the long skirt looked at him and said coldly, "Okay, he Jiarong, he has been in a coma for 2 months, and he doesn't even know his wife." Book 18188289. Book 18188289. Trial reading of content, Book 1818289134268847.ht. Pirate's Bounty Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 224. Although I had already foreseen that they would come, I still had the impression that I broke through the wall. But he never expected that the wall behind him would be broken and he would almost be buried in the tiles. Luogu didn't know what to say for a while, so he sucked his teeth, since he was invisible anyway, and no one could see him, so he just kept silent. On the other side, Luffy saw Kemi locked in the bathtub at a glance. Without saying anything, he immediately ran away. "Kemi." Luogu slapped his trouser legs. Under the invisible state, others could not see him, but he could see himself clearly until the trouser legs were stained with a lot of dust. At the same time, several eyes fell on him. It should have attracted the attention of others when he dodged to leave just now. But as long as you don't see anyone, it's not a big deal even if you get noticed. At this moment, gunfire rang out. Tianlong held a gun in his hand, and Xiao Ba had a bullet hole in his body, and blood flowed. Luffy stayed on the spot. This scene seemed to make him a little confused. However, Tianlong was like a clown, proud of his marksmanship. In the audience, most people were stunned and horrified. Luogu noticed that Robin and the others were already mentally prepared, and couldn't help but smile. Xiao Ba was injured, but he didn't die. There is no reason why such a gunshot wound would kill him. After all, as a murloc who can turn around and go back to the room to take a knife, his vitality is still very strong. So now I'm having a heart-to-heart talk with Luffy. The general content is that I regret what I did in the village at that time, I hope to be forgiven by Nami, and there are some other things that I don't have. However, at this time, such words are more deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Even Luogu couldn't help shaking his head when he heard it, not knowing how it felt, not to mention Luffy, who had been with him day and night recently. The young man clenched his fists, all the anger condensed between those 10 fingers, and stepped towards the Tianlong people with steady steps. Although he still looked thin, there was an indescribable aura derived from him bit by bit. Luogu looked up, his eyes thoughtful, and thought to himself, did it start from this time? Or should I say it was earlier? Luffy's domineering awakening is in front of the Empress. But the sprout was definitely not born at that time, maybe now or even earlier. Anyway, Luogu could clearly feel at this moment that the unreleased feeling in this guy's body, once it really breaks out, it should be Overlord. But this is just his conjecture. After all, as a person who has just awakened Ba Wanghu, his understanding of this ability is still limited. As for Overlord color and domineering chi, Luogu hasn't even used black iron coins to upgrade it. Because he always feels that this ability is a bit weird and useless. It's not that this ability is not powerful, whether it's Shanks or Rayleigh, the domineering looks they show are full of domineering and powerful. Without moving the body, without shaking the shoulders, standing in place can make most people paralyzed to the ground, unable to move. It is so powerful that it can be called fantasy. But the setting of this ability is effective for the weak. It has almost no effect on the strong. Even if Luffy reaches the end of his training and probably uses his haki on Shanks, Shanks will just fix his hair and miss the straw hat he gave to Luffy. If you want to use domineering to make Shanks lie on the ground, not to mention that Luffy can't do it, Rogu asked himself, even if he raised his domineering to level 6, he might not be able to do it. So for the time being, he really has no idea of improving this ability. Anyway, for ordinary useless wood, the current level is enough. As for what is needed in the future, it is always too late at the last minute. The thoughts in his mind were tumbling very fast, but his eyes kept falling on Luffy, and he saw that Luffy had come to that Tianlong at this time. During this period, the man fired 2 shots, and Luffy avoided them at will. His eyes were unblinking, wrapped in angry flames, and he was already in front of him in a blink of an eye. In the next second, without even the slightest hesitation, the fist wrapped in all his anger had already swung to the face of the Tianlong in front of him. It's impossible to describe what kind of punch it was. In terms of power, it was very strong, but it was not enough to shock someone like Luogu or even look at him differently. But this punch was extremely heavy. Because this punch was a celestial dragon, the peace of the Chambord Islands will be shattered by this punch, and the Admiral will also appear here because of this punch. Therefore, this punch cannot be heavy. When the fist landed, there was a bang, and the entire Tianlong flew out in a twirl. With a bang, several chairs were directly smashed into pieces. But this guy didn't die. The whole venue was already in chaos. The place where Luogu was not immune, there were crowds running wildly everywhere. He simply jumped into the air, squatted on the wall, and looked at the minibus lying in the center of the field, feeling a little regretful in his heart. Why did you let this guy go? If you catch him, you can extract the suction cups from his 8 claws. You don't have to work so hard now, right? But looking at my hand, if it has a suction cup, it really doesn't look very good. After thinking about it wildly in my mind, I looked up again, and the confusion had basically subsided. A group of people swarmed up to Kami's side and untied her. Although it was strange as to where Robin got the key, no one asked much. Lei Li also walked out from the backstage. Under the domineering look, all the miscellaneous fish had lost consciousness. Luogu sat on the wall with his legs crossed and looked at the door of the auction house with a smile on his face. The show is about to begin. After letting go of my thoughts, I suddenly felt the strong wind tearing from my ears. As soon as he turned his head, he saw a fluffy white head, bared his teeth, and swept his legs fiercely towards him. He slapped his palm on the wall, and his figure changed position in the blink of an eye. Just as he stood still, a knife was pointed in front of Luogu. Who are you? Luogu was silent for about 3 seconds, and he had already discovered the problem. Looking at the ground, there were messy footprints and dust, and where he landed, others must have seen an extra footprint out of thin air. Thinking of this, he not only sighed, "It's really troublesome." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 225. Probably because he had already felt the gaze at first, and later found some traces in the mess, but he was obviously very sure when he finally drew the knife. Luogu is a little tangled now. It's not scary to be caught out of the invisible state. But this ability, he wants to hide it more, the kind that no one knows, and he can use this ability to do bad things very conveniently in the future. So, he grinned. Although he said it was very troublesome, the next second, a strong wind suddenly blew up. The entire space was instantly shrouded in dust and smoke. Luogu's expression changed, and with just one glance, he could see the circle of smoke suddenly breaking through a human-shaped hole. But when I wanted to chase him, I no longer knew where the target was. He frowned, and finally decided to give up. The real trouble now is not this invisible transparent man, the more troublesome thing is what to do next. He really wanted to leave right now, but the problem was, even if he left, it didn't seem very useful. The world's nobility is the top priority, and it is very important to the Navy headquarters. I'm afraid that at this time, the Navy is about to surround this place. He glanced at Kid not far away, just as his gaze also looked over. It's just the indescribable wildness in his eyes. This made the corners of Ludo's mouth rise unavoidably. Pirates are always creatures that don't know what fear is. They have always liked challenges like this. Ludo saw the tacit understanding between the two pirates looking at each other. But he didn't care much when he saw it. He was squatting next to the defeated Tianlong, and he poked his face with his finger. And nothing happened. He smiled and poked him to death. Well, maybe it makes the already serious situation even more serious. Ludo stood up, glanced at these people on the scene, smiled slightly, and then came to another Tianlong grin. An old man, a young man, and a woman are the only three at present. In the chaos just now, the Straw Hats fought with their attendants. The young man was punched by Luffy and then stabbed to death by Ludo. Ludo came to the old man's side again and trampled him to death. There was no hesitation, and the skills he used were also very measured, trying not to let his shoes be stained with blood. Then he came to the stage of the auction house. Just as he was about to cut off the woman's head, he found a gaze fixed on him. Ludo looked up helplessly and looked at Laylee. Rayleigh's gaze is very dangerous, as ferocious as the Neptune type in the sea. No, the Neptune type is even more ferocious. Ludo thought about it, and then smiled. And cut the woman's throat. Boom. The sweeping momentum suddenly hit. Ludo only felt a sudden roar in his head. But in an instant, he had already recovered. Then he grinned silently. What can a washed-up old pirate do even if he can detect himself? Threat yourself, scare yourself, and prevent yourself from messing around. If I were so obedient, I would either be a school-level officer in the Navy by now, or I would be honestly working as a swordsmanship teacher in Moon Village. How is it possible to deal with pirates like you here? He took a slight step back, a frivolous smile hanging on his face. What a pity. I can't communicate with you in such a scene, but there will definitely be a chance in the future. He didn't turn around, but he retreated a little bit. Soon, he was at the edge of the venue. In a flash, he was already outside the venue. The outside has been surrounded by the Navy. As long as the Tianlong people are in the slightest danger, these Marines appear like pugs. It's really unpleasant. Maybe this is one of the reasons why I don't want to be a Navy officer. Ludo touched his chin and laughed jokingly. So, what will happen next? After beating the Tianlong people and killing the Tianlong people, the influence should be completely different. Well, by then the bears will still be there. Will the opportunity send you all over the world? If you can do it, then everything will proceed as before. If you can't do it, what interesting trouble will you cause? I hope you don't die. As long as you support and pass this level, your bounty will definitely grow very quickly. As he quietly walked out of the crowd, he couldn't help but feel a little worried, but in this way, is it considered to be trying to encourage others? It would be too embarrassing to let you die before you grow up because of this relationship. After finding a suitable place, he revealed his figure, and then dusted himself off. He looked thoughtfully at the dust in his hands. The ability to be invisible does indeed have many flaws. But these flaws are not so easy to exploit. Those that fall on the body will disappear due to the influence of the ability, but those that fly in the air will not disappear, resulting in the formation of a ridiculous human-shaped hole in the space. The same is true for the feet. But these are not the most important. The most important thing is the eyes. The gaze will not disappear just because the body disappears. Whether it is Ludo or Rayleigh, they must have discovered me based on this. Ha, a ghost appeared out of thin air. To you, it is indeed not very strange. Friendly look. Walking out of the hiding place, he glanced towards the auction house. The cannons were already set up, and the Navy was shouting. Luogu smiled, and didn't plan to get involved now, nor did he plan to do so in the future. However, he seemed to be looking at it superfluously, and a navy just met his gaze. Luogu froze for a moment, shook his head, turned and walked back. There shouldn't be any problems. He pondered in his mind, recalled all the details in the auction house as a whole, and finally nodded, confirming this point. But things often don't go as smoothly as imagined. When he got back to the boat, the phone bug rang. He looked at the phone bug and sighed. He didn't want to answer it, but after hesitating for a while, he still answered it. "You're in the Chambord Islands." Lester's voice rang in his ears as if urging him to die. Luogu picked his ears and did not deny this. "Who told you that?" "Of course I have my own ways," Lester said eagerly. "Something big happened in the Chambord Islands." "I see, it seems that someone caused trouble at the auction house." Luogu didn't deliberately hide this point. After all, he was seen by the Navy, and Lester immediately called. He wouldn't believe it even if he died. "Well," Lester was confused, "since you know, why didn't you take a look? Instead, you seemed to be avoiding something and left the scene quickly." Pirate's Bounty Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 226. Good question. Luogu was also thinking about how to answer, and then realized that the answer was too obvious. "Of course it's your fault." There was a well-hidden helplessness in Luogu's voice, and Lester appropriately noticed it. "What's going on, Tina?" Needless to say, if Lester didn't understand what Luogu meant, this kid wouldn't have to mess around in the Navy headquarters. Then Luogu heard a suppressed, not good titter at all. The corners of Luogu's mouth twitched. This was obviously the result he wanted. "Why do you still want to beat him up so much now that you hear this guy's laughter?" Taking a deep breath, he rubbed his face. "You said, if I beat you to death, Tina would not have time to save you. You value sex over friends." Lester replied seriously, "Why beat me to death instead of Tina? Don't tell me, you can't beat her." "Humph, only men who have no ability would hit women. You are discriminating against equality between men and women. Why can't you fight?" Luogu was stunned for a moment. How to answer this? In the end, he simply played a rogue. "If you have the ability, go and fight." "What?" Lester was extremely quick thinking. "I do think so, but I can make a better calculation." "How come a loser like you has become an honor?" Luogu's face turned dark. "He looked like I was weak, but I was reasonable. He really deserved a beating." "You don't care, you value sex over friends anyway. I've already seen it, but that's fine. To a certain extent, my plan is successful." Lester chuckled. Luogu frowned. What plan succeeded? Isn't his plan to let himself and Tina be together, and then something like that? Why, now it has become like this, but he is quite happy. "Did you know that there is a very elusive relationship between men and women?" Lester said. "This relationship is called ambiguity." "Your sister is ambiguous." Luogu suppressed his impatience and said, "Talk like a human being. All in all, it's the kind of relationship you have, entangled and unclear. You don't like each other at first, and then you end up in trouble. Finally, you end up on an uninhabited island, cold and lonely, a ball of flames, burning, and finally so and so, so and so." Lester muttered in an extremely despicable manner, which left Luogu speechless. "How much have you drunk?" "Don't worry about me," Lester sneered. "Don't think I'm joking with you. I'm telling you, this is very possible. Moreover, it doesn't matter even if you don't call each other. Because between men and women, in relationships, there is a strange situation that makes others think you are related. This is enough." "What do you mean?" Luogu felt like he was living in vain in the era of information explosion. Why couldn't he understand most of Lester's words? Is it because he has never been in a relationship? Hey, come to think of it, I've never been in a relationship, so why are I still so obsessed with the issue of going back? He asked a question, and then more questions seemed to be born in his mind. Lester hummed and said, "First of all, it doesn't matter what the real relationship between you and Tina is. What matters is what others see. No matter what you think, what others see is what Tina wants. Chasing you at all costs, even driving a warship thousands of miles to chase your husband. Then in order to realize your dream of being a pirate hunter, you had to reluctantly refuse, but you still couldn't let go of your love for her. You struggled hard between your lover and your dream. In the end, you gave Tina's promise is that when you become the king of pirate hunters, you will marry her as your bride." Luogu stood up, trembling. Lester quickly asked, "What are you doing? I have goosebumps all over my body." "Shake them off quickly. I'll have to sweep them away later." Luogu was not joking. He really felt cold. That's not how bad jokes are told, okay? If someone believes this kind of thing, it means they have seen a ghost. Let me tell you, don't think that no one will believe this kind of thing. In fact, there are many people who are willing to believe this kind of thing. Lester said calmly, "As long as you push the situation a little bit, as long as you say a little bit of truth that is not quite true, people will always choose to believe what they want to believe." Luogu does not doubt this. He still has some understanding of human nature, so, you are planning to add fuel to the flames in this matter. This will be to you. By the way, in this case, they will all think that because of with this kind of relationship, Tina and I will have a closer relationship with you, which will better allow you to continue to work at the Navy headquarters. By the way, can I ask you a question? What is the phone number of Sengoku? I'll give it to you. If he calls and reports it, he should be able to get a lot of Baileys." "Useless," Lester said, "the superior must understand the trade-off. To him, these things are nothing more than trivial matters. In fact, everything now is probably not the ability I have shown. If you want to be in the Navy, he occupies a high position among the Navy, and his strength is the first, but if he doesn't know the way to adapt, how can he keep climbing up? Don't underestimate the Navy. This is some serious talk. But that's pretty much it for the conversation." Luogu took his ears and said, "So, it's okay. Hang up. No, I really have something to do with you. If you don't tell me if you have something to do and waste so much time on the phone, you are really sick, aren't you?" Luogu said with a dark face. "Isn't this just a quick talk? By the way, I have something to tell you. It's an opportunity. I'm calling you today to extend an invitation to you on behalf of the Navy headquarters to invite you to assist our Navy. Capture a group of pirates on the Chambord Islands. I will tell you the list later, and now I will tell you what benefits this matter has to you. On the one hand, it is the goodwill of the Navy headquarters to release you. On the other hand, money, of course it won't be less, and it can be settled directly at the Shampoo Islands, without running around. Finally, this is a good opportunity to show his face and let the Navy see what kind of pirate hunter Noros Rogu is. The standard can also make some people extinguish the fire of some ridiculous and small ambitions. Compared with the previous bunch of nonsense, this passage seems to have a lot of depth." Luogu was thoughtful, tapping his fingers on the table twice, and then asked with a smile, "Okay, in that case, by the way, I will also kill the 2 pirates I captured in the Shampoo Islands. How about checking the account? Pirate's bounty don't run away." Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 227. 2 pirates, who did you capture? Are you famous? Maybe there are some. Luogu reported the 2 names. Then the other end squirted. After a long while, Lester spoke, "Supernova. Hey, I thought this was just a way for them to entertain themselves, but I didn't expect you to know it too. Of course, if you know these two people can do it, you can just hand it over directly when the time comes. The money will be paid without any problem. When Lester said this, he couldn't help sighing. In this way, your worth will increase again. My worth? Luogu keenly noticed Lester's wording and found it a bit funny. Why, I already have a worth. Of course, do you think it costs nothing to ask you to take action? Lester said with a smile. After knowing that you are in the Chambord Islands, the Navy headquarters is ready to pay you to take action. Ha, if you say so. I have to open my mouth once. After saying this, Luogu began to think about the pros and cons at this moment. From this point of view, the Navy headquarters has indeed begun to notice itself. After doing things or something, it seems that you really can't do anything arbitrarily. Fortunately, there is still the ability to be invisible. If there is any inconvenient thing, you can still do it without anyone noticing. In addition, Luogu thought of what he had done using his identity as a painter, but the painter had disappeared for such a long time in the blink of an eye. Many people may not think of all this to themselves, but if it takes too long to show up, it is hard to guarantee that no one will use their brains in this area to connect the two things together. The Navy headquarters noticed their reasons. Is there such a thing? This may not be impossible, Luogu thought in his heart. If there is a suitable opportunity, it seems that the painter should indeed appear once. Moreover, the place where it appeared was to be in another place, trying to completely isolate these two identities. Just give the world government a wrong signal and let them search for the invisible and intangible identity. But, how to do this? Luogu thought about it carefully, but found that he had no clue for a while. Lester's voice came to his ears again. It's best not to, they will definitely give you a fair price, you can rest assured. Moreover, after this cooperation, there may be another possibility of cooperation in the future. For example, if you catch a big pirate or something, if you succeed, the pirate will offer you a bounty, and you won't lose your money. This is good news. Having said that, Luogu raised his head, and it was the three of Makita who came back, and immediately said to Lester, "Okay, stop talking nonsense, tell me the list, and work will start later." "Okay. There are many people on the list, but it is nothing more than 3 groups. Straw Hats, Kid Pirates, Hard Pirates. These people have all appeared at auctions before, and the bounties for each of them are higher than what is known today. It seems that pulling seedlings to encourage growth is really effective." It happened that the 3 of Makita boarded the boat, and Rogu asked Makita to bring over the arrest warrant of the Kid Pirates. Others are not interesting, mainly Captain Kidd. The current reward amount is million, and in 2 years it will be million. And the offer Lester just made to himself became million. Maybe if we wait a little longer, we will kill the Tianlong people. It's not that simple. A smile appeared on the corner of Luogu's lips. In that case, I don't want the million, and I will take the million. Throwing the reward order aside, he stood up. Makita Dashki and the others have been following him for a long time and know his character. Immediately he asked, "Is there any work?" "A good deal, million." Luogu smiled slightly. "Let's go." Kid Pirates. Rogu began to try to recall the abilities of this pirate member. His golden finger only displayed the name and the bounty. Other than that, there was no extra content. And right now, he didn't even know where to find this. But soon he was no longer in trouble, because he didn't take 2 steps after getting off the boat, and he already saw a Navy signal soldier waiting there. "Is this Mr. Noros Luogu? I was assigned to help you." "Are you? Which one do I want to know about now?" "That's great." Luogu couldn't help but smile. The Navy is still very good at being a good person. "I want to know the news about the Kid Pirates and the others." "Okay, the Kid Pirates and the Hard Pirates are currently working together against the pacifists." After explaining the location and the general situation, Luogu thought about it for a while, and then said to Daisuke, "Take him to the boat and hand over the 2 pirates I just caught." If you don't pay him, you won't let go. Uh-oh. Daisuke immediately nodded and grabbed the man's sleeve. Let's go. The man was stunned for a moment, and before he could react, he disappeared directly from the spot. Boost. Logogu was a little sharper and started to speed up. The strength of the pacifists is actually not worth mentioning, but at this stage, Kid and the others still have a hard time playing this thing. If you go late, there is almost no point in appearing on the stage by yourself. To be honest, the Chambord Islands are not inferior to the power of the Navy. Calling myself together has some other plots in it. Logogu knew this, but he still couldn't remain indifferent. He could only sigh, it's good to make money. Words are long, but words are short. When Logogu found the place, the scene seemed quite tragic. The pacifist's body was damaged in many places, and he was being slapped with arcs of electricity. Kid didn't know how he was hit, but all his clothes were missing. He was shirtless and looked excited, just like he was when he was a kid. I defeated the boss at the end of the level. In the surrounding area, a group of people were either lying down, lying on their stomachs, or scattered around. The injuries may not be particularly serious, but it seemed that it was not so easy to get up for a while. Logogu couldn't help but clapped his hands. That's great. Who? Kid suddenly turned his head and saw the three Logogu standing on the branch of the tree. Pupils suddenly contract. Logo, who was not far away, also changed his expression. Pirate Hunter, Noro's Luogu. It seems that I don't need to introduce myself. Logogu smiled slightly, and in a flash, he was already standing in front of Kid. Well, next, I will be your opponent, are you happy? Kid's expression once again reminded Logogu of himself when he was a child. At that time, I defeated the boss at the end of the level, but I only managed to win miserably and almost died. Then, at this time, another boss appeared. As expected, a boss like this must die. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate's Bounty, don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 228. There is nothing wrong with describing this battle as lackluster. Kid, who has already reached Chengdu, can't add any scars to Logogu's body even if he exhausts his best strength. The chains bound his entire body, and Rogula pulled him away. Hey! The sound of calling made Logogu stop, and turned his head to look at the source of the sound. What is the name of the guy wearing the mask? Okira. Here are the pirates worth million. Logogu smiled, what can I do for you? Let him go. Kira, wearing a mask, stood up staggeringly. It seemed that a gust of wind could make him sit on the ground again, but even though his legs were trembling all the time, he was still trying to make his body stand straight. Logogu smiled, I'll give you a chance, but if you really want to take action, there are only two results. Hakira smiled, and then quietly waited for Logogu's next words. First, if you win, your captain will take you away. Second, if you lose, you will be taken away by me. Logogu spread his palms, the last option is to lie down. I will pretend that I have not seen all of you. When he said this, he glanced at Logo, who was trying to get up. You can pretend you didn't see me. Logo immediately stretched out his hands. The current situation is not an opponent at all, and if he reluctantly makes a move, it is nothing more than giving the guy in front of him a chance to capture him. Although he didn't know why he would let people like him go, it was just for Kid, whom he met for the first time, a pirate who was destined to be his opponent. He had no reason to fight Logogu head-on. Law made his choice accordingly, and so did Kira. It's not sensible. Rogu threw Kira to Makita with a flick of his hand. With a touch of his feet, he had already drawn a distance of 5 meters. Looking at the blade in his hand, Rogu shook his head, forget it, Come with me. The light of the knife rises, and the arc moon flashes. Kira's expression was hidden, and he couldn't see it at all. The blade on his hands was held in front of him. The next second, a crisp sound resounded, and the blade broke. Hui pushed his body forward all the way, and with a bang, he hit a big tree. The tree trunk on the back burst suddenly, and the front of the clothes on the chest split instantly, and blood spattered. The whole body seemed to be embedded in the tree trunk, and it would not fall down for a while. Luogu came in front of him and tied him up casually. Well, money has arrived again, but unfortunately, you haven't made much progress. Luogu muttered, and walked away in front of everyone. Luo got up from the ground, frowning. Everything about today's events was unusual. Why does Luogu appear here? It just so happens that there is a deeper reason. There is not enough information at this point to infer at all. However, there was indeed an unexpected change in the auction house, and the death of Tianlonggren should be done by that transparent person. But why did he do this? It was because his actions aroused his disgust, so he needed to use this method to teach his group a lesson. I closed my eyes and carefully thought about everything I experienced today, and finally got more puzzled and bewildered. Taking a last look at Kid's remnant, he sighed, "Let's go." The Chambord Islands have obviously become a place of right and wrong. At this time, maybe the generals have already arrived. If they continue to stay here, they will only be caught by others, and they will leave immediately to keep their freedom. I can figure out what happened today. Luogu took the two of them, but did not return to their ship. Instead, go in another direction. It might have been difficult to tell where the place was before, but now just by looking at the overflowing light in the sky, I already understood. Where are we going? But such a question was still asked by Mishita. Looking for money from someone, Luogu said concisely. But when he arrived, what he saw was a scene of running away. Also, the two people who are confronting each other. Wearing a yellow striped suit, he has a typical uncle's face and is very decadent. Although he is very tall, no matter how you look at him, he looks like a loser. Luogu has always felt that this guy's character design gives people a strong sense of contrast. It is obviously such an image, even when he speaks, he has that damned half-dead tone, but it is so tyrannical. Relying on his fast speed, even when he was about to hit the opponent, he was still in the mood to say hello to the opponent. How on earth did such a person become a general? Luogu complained silently in his heart, and then set his sights on the other side. Old man. A healthy-looking old man with a smile on his lips, as if he didn't take anything seriously. It was not a smile that was free and easy and did not care about any trouble. It was a smile that he was capable of solving anything that happened in front of him. Hades Raleigh. Luogu threw the man aside, and then leaned against the tree trunk, ready to see if the two would fight. What is it like in the comics? I can't remember it. When Luogu was thinking this, Kizaru's eyes had already fallen on him. Ara Allah, isn't this the pirate hunter Noro's Luogu? His tone was very strange. It wasn't that he had any objection to Luogu. He always spoke in this tone. Maybe it's because he's too strong. Otherwise, if this guy has maintained such a tone since he was a child, he will probably be beaten to death before he reaches adulthood. To a certain extent, the people who can raise him are really trying to protect him. Well, maybe people didn't talk like this when they were young. After they became stronger, they felt that saying things like this can disgust others, and others can't beat them. How interesting. Luogu thought about a lot of disrespectful things in his mind for a long time. He slandered the boss, then pointed at the two people on the ground and said, "Chinjui is million. There is no discount for small businesses. What are your plans? Pay it off before the fight, or plan to pay it off after the fight?" That guy is Naris Ragu. The voice came from the other end. It turned out that the blond young man who was running away spoke, with curled eyebrows. Luogu smiled, long time no see, why don't you stay? He runs faster. Luogu not only sighed, I finally met an acquaintance. Is it true that you are so familiar with pirates? Kizaru came to him at some point, and his eyes under the brown sunglasses stared at him with a lackluster look. Pirates' bounty don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 229. It would be strange if someone in my line of work didn't know a few pirates. Luogu spread his hands indifferently and didn't care at all about Kizaru's glare. He just threw the two pirates over casually and said, I heard that I can get money from you. Oh, the hands and feet are so fast. Kizaru glanced at the two people on the ground, and then nodded, I remember one of them had a price increase. It's terrible. I have made so much money casually for so many years. When I was your age, I was very poor woolen cloth. Luogu smiled and said, after all, we want different things. You are a navy and I am a pirate hunter. I was born to pursue money, but you are for, justice. Why do I always feel like I'm being ridiculed by a brat? Kizaru glanced at Luogu and said, are you kidding me? Not interested. He stretched out his hand and said, 562 million yuan. You're not cute, just wipe off the fraction. Kizaru tried to bargain. Luogu was silent for a moment and said to Rayleigh over there, are you interested in killing a general? I've learned some new skills recently, and I'm just looking for someone to try it. With my help, I can almost kill him. Hey, that's a very dangerous statement. Huang Yuan didn't know whether he was really nervous or just pretending to be aggressive, so he really glanced at Layli next to him. Riley smiled slightly and said, very interested. No way. Kizaru sighed softly, spare me. I'm old and I don't want to fight to the death with guys like you here. It's just for a small change. As for that, okay. Okay, I'll give you the money. He took out the card, and then took out another one, and finally took out a total of 13 cards and handed them to Luogu. If I remember correctly, there seems to be no limit on this thing. The corner of Luogu's mouth twitched and he began to consider whether to buy a card holder. No, there is no, but the problem is that there are zeros and rounded ones. I can't just give you million. So, these 5 are for million, these 6 are for million, and these 2 are for 1 million. A total of million, 13 cards in total. In a way, you really win. He took the card, put it in his arms, and turned to leave. Hey! The yellow ape's voice came from behind. Rogu turned around. You don't have a particularly deep relationship with the pirates, right? Why do you always feel that you can't ignore this easily? Don't tell me, there are no pirates hiding in your navy. Luogu curled his lips, besides, when I met that guy, he had not yet become a pirate. Oh, that's right. Kizaru nodded, occasionally, things like this happen. Well, it's nice to see you here today. While speaking, he suddenly raised his head slightly, with a hint of coldness in his eyes under the brown sunglasses. I hope you can consider every step before moving forward. What do you mean? Luogu raised his eyebrows. Just a little advice. Kizaru smiled, also, can I ask you to catch those guys who ran away just now? By the way, it doesn't matter if others can't catch them. Don't let the boy in the straw hat go. Luogu was silent for a moment, then smiled and said, okay. He didn't ask why you didn't go by yourself, he had to be willing to go to Raleigh. Luogu left with the two girls, and Mishita asked in a low voice, really want to catch the straw hat? After looking at her, Luogu smiled and said, just talking. What if he asks you if we meet again? Perona asked again. I went, but I didn't catch him. Luogu said helplessly, you can find a lot of reasons, excuses, etc. at any time. What I'm curious about is why he had to let me catch the straw hat. Is there anything strange about this? Mishita said. From a standpoint, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong. Luogu didn't speak, but suddenly smiled. I remember, their group should have run this way. Go get it? Go and see the excitement. It was really lively. A group of guys who were fleeing desperately encountered obstacles again. After all, it's the Shampoo Islands. Luogu stood on the tree and looked at the tragic situation on the ground. It's really not that easy to leave. That is. Perona frowned slightly. The tyrant. Tyrant Makita slowed down a little, and then reacted. Bartholomew Bear. It's so scary. Perona frowned. Where are the people he attacked? Just kill him. Mishita gasped. Captain, we won't take action against this guy. There is no such need, and there is no such reason. Luogu frowned, and then looked at the two people who were still facing each other not far away. It seems that the state of peace has been broken and the two have gone to war. The distance between each other is not far. Luogu sighed. In this case, if you just sit back and ignore it, you have to think of a better explanation. What to do then? Let's take a look first. Luogu smiled. After all, judging from the current situation, there is no need for us to take action. The Straw Hat Gang had no ability to resist at all, and was slapped away by all kinds of slaps, and one person was lost with one slap. Guys like Luffy, who are naturally nervous, are beginning to feel hopeless. However, no matter how he roared or cried, nothing changed. Such a result seems to have been doomed from the moment they encountered the tyrant. Luogu only hated that he didn't have melon seeds in his hand now, otherwise, he would have to eat melon seeds to watch the fun, and it would be too exciting. After all, in the current situation, he doesn't have the sense of substitution that he saw in front of the screen, and he is not familiar with Luffy, and he also knows the real situation of the bear, so apart from being lively and interesting, he doesn't have that kind of attention. But feeling very leisurely. However, when he was leisurely, Luffy's eyes suddenly drifted to him for some reason. The moment their eyes collided, Luogu frowned. He stood up and said, "Forget it, let's go, there is no reason for us to take action." But just when he was about to leave, a voice came from under the tree, "Are you still here watching?" Luogu glanced at him and Lei next to him, and smiled helplessly. "Otherwise, there seems to be no reason for me to take action." Of course, as soon as Kizaru said this, he was suddenly stunned, and Luogu was also stunned, because at this moment, his chest was entangled with rubber-like arms. "I said," he pressed the hilt of Kuromaru's knife. "What do you want?" Before he finished speaking, he felt his head buzzing, and his eyes were completely dark. Pirate's Bounty. Don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 230. Zolaname, Usopp, Sanji, Chopper, Robin. Frenchbrook. Luogu felt that it was quite noisy in his ears. No, it was very noisy. "Can you stop for a while and stop shouting?" Luogu looked helplessly at the flying sky, with some helplessness in his eyes. Why the hell does this happen? Is it because of some kind of hatred? Why was he caught by Luffy at the last moment? Forget about catching him, why didn't he make a decisive decision and cut off Luffy's hands? By the way, what kind of situation was that? How could he still have the chance to stretch out his arms and catch himself? Is Seong a dead person? And it was obvious that he was about to be arrested, so why did he slap him so hard? Isn't it said that a big man has great wisdom? Where did the wisdom go? Why do I have to fall into such a situation? To be honest, he didn't think there was any big problem with flying around like this. But Luffy's noise was really unbearable. And Luffy. Zolaname, Usopp, Sanji, Chopper, Robin, Frenchbrook, where are you? I've been barking for a whole day, and this guy doesn't feel tired at all. How about a little drink of water? I'm already beginning to miss the red wine on my boat. Talk, What should those people on the boat do in this situation? I'm afraid Perona will leave directly. Mishita may be a little sad, but she doesn't have the courage to ask Xiong for an explanation. This girl is timid to begin with. And Daskin, what will she do? Mobilize everyone to search for my traces? Or go find a bear? But the bear certainly won't say it. Luffy's whereabouts are an absolute secret. If possible, this is probably not the result he wants to see. After all, who would have thought that what Luffy wanted in the end was not to make a last stand, but to catch himself because he had caught his brother, a straw hat boy with a trick in his mind, and he had been tricked this time. Zoraname Usopp. I asked you to stop and think with your heels. You can also know that they are all still alive. You can scream whatever you say. Besides me, who else can hear your voice? Alive. Luffy didn't hear anything else, but he heard this clearly. Are you really alive? Why are you so sure? You are a hateful hunter who captured Ace with despicable means. I won't consider the issue of what you call me in this situation, but as long as you have a brain and think about it, you are not dead yet. How can anything happen to them who are treated equally? Yes. Luffy suddenly realized, they must still be alive. You are very smart, but I will never forgive you for what you did to Ace. That's the grievance between me and Ace, and the winner has already been decided. Luogu said righteously, if you want to avenge him, we can have a fight after landing. It is meaningless to talk about this kind of thing with words now, and the most important thing is that I may have used it in it. Some means, but in the final battle, I definitely did not use any despicable method as a swordsman. This is my dignity. Please don't insult me. That's it? Luffy was silent for a moment, then suddenly burst into laughter. That guy Ace was actually defeated sometimes, ha ha ha. Why are you laughing? Luogu was confused. Let's forget about forgetting grudges with a smile. Ha ha ha, how is that possible? Luffy had no intention of writing it off, but I really have no room to interfere with the grudge between Ace and you, but I will rescue him and let him come to you for revenge in an upright manner. This guy's brain circuit is really different from that of ordinary people. Then Luogu talked about another thing. By the way, can you let go? It's very embarrassing to be held by you like this. The current state is that within an air mask, Luffy is lying on his back holding Luogu, and Luogu is lying on his back and looking at the sky. And this state has lasted for a full day. Luogu is not a pervert. Even if he doesn't like the ridiculous scenes like blind dates and marriages arranged by Lester on his own initiative, he never thought that he would be in such close contact with a man for such a long time. It's disgusting. No. Luffy refused without hesitation, I have no strength. Luogu was speechless. By the way, if you had realized earlier that Ace's grudges had nothing to do with you, would you still have taken action against me? Will not. Luffy said, everyone has their own consciousness from the moment they set foot on the sea. I can't tolerate you using despicable means to harm him, but if you defeat him upright, then I have nothing to say. Such a serious statement was actually made by Luffy. The corner of Luogu's mouth twitched. It seems that I was wrong for not saying hello to you seriously. Luffy thought for a moment, then laughed. What are you laughing at again? Why do you want to be a pirate hunter? Why don't you become a pirate? Has our friendship reached a point where we can discuss this kind of issue? Luogu was speechless, and then sighed, I am forced by life. Not understand. Luffy said simply, how about you join me and help rescue Ace, and then become a pirate with me? You're afraid you're sick. Luogu feels that his head hurts. Why are these two things connected? Why do I have to help you? No, Luffy said again, do you know where Zoro and the others have gone? Well, Luogu said, since the bear has no murderous intention towards you, and it is not sending you away to harm you, it must have its own purpose. You should also realize that your current strength has no way to fight against the general. I speculate that they were probably sent to study, increase their strength, and then continue your journey. Luffy didn't speak after listening. Luogu was a little puzzled, but after the noise in his ears stopped, he felt a little calmer. He looked up at the sky, and when did he stop? Moreover, it won't really fall into Amazon Lily, right? Daughter Island is not a nice place, and the Empress is not an easy woman to get along with. But the only advantage of that place is probably that there are more sea kings, so you should be able to eat enough. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 231. Keep flying. Still flying. Flying for 3 days and 3 nights. Luogu yawned continuously, and his mind was a little groggy. In fact, during these 3 days, neither hunger nor thirst was the most terrible thing, and it was no problem to support him with his physique. The worst thing is boredom. Looking at the clouds during the day, counting the stars at night, and chatting with Luffy at the beginning. To be honest, this was an incredible experience for Luogu. He didn't expect that one day he would be able to chat with Luffy until he had nothing to talk about. Of course, this is mainly because there are some things he can't say, and Luffy's mind is relatively simple, and what he is thinking about is dreams, companions, One Piece, and so on. Even if Luogu declared more than once that he would definitely catch him at that time, Luffy didn't care much. Until the guy lost his mind and fell into a semi-comatose state, all he chanted were these words. And now this guy started mumbling the same thing again, Zoraname Usopp. The corner of Luogu's mouth twitched, and when he was wondering if he should also consider the situation of Daisuke and the others, he found that the perspective that had remained unchanged had begun to change. They are lowering altitude. Hey, wake up. He quickly called Luffy. Luffy murmured in response, Zoraname Usopp. Uncle Luogu's face turned dark, but after thinking about it, it seemed that even waking this guy up would be of no use. If so, that's fine. The angle of view tilted more and more, and the green trees of the island could already be seen in the field of vision. And it was only at this time that they could feel how fast the speed was. Almost the moment Luogu saw the treetops, they had already rushed into the woods, and there was a bang, and the ground sank in silence. Big pit. It was as if something was broken around them, and the weight returned to their bodies, falling. Whoops! Luffy screamed, then looked around blankly. What's going on? Landed. Luogu got up from him and moved his already stiff limbs. Luffy immediately got up from the ground and began to look around. Zolaname, Usopp, Sanji, Chopper, Robin Frenchbrook. There was no response after shouting once, and then came again. Luogu couldn't stand listening anymore and quickly said, "Calm down, they shouldn't be around. But since you are still alive, they must be like this too, so just relax." Not here. Luffy, who was still full of fighting spirit just now, suddenly became sluggish, and his stomach groaned in grief. So is Rogu. He looked around and said, "Let's find something to eat first, and then think about what to do next. You know, Sanji is a chef, a very good one." Luffy said. "I've eaten the food he cooked." At the sea restaurant, Luogu's eyes suddenly focused on a place. The next second, his figure disappeared. In the void, the light of the arc moon could be seen faintly flashing through the woods. There was a hint of commotion, but it quickly subsided. After a while, Luogu slowly walked out with a wild boar, and then said to Luffy, "Look over there to see if there is any water source." Luffy said blankly, "What are you doing?" "Roast wild boar, find something to drink. By the way, it will definitely be bloody to deal with this guy. I don't plan to eat bloody meat." "Oh, I got it." Luffy suddenly realized, "Are you a survival expert?" I don't seem to have such a guy on the ship, so you. No way. This is already a cliché, and I don't know what is going on in this guy's mind, but he tried to invite himself, a pirate hunter, to join his gang more than once. Luffy was a little depressed, but quickly cheered up. Where do you think my companions will be? How do I know? Luogu said as he walked. But considering that the bears have no killing intention towards you, they will not be allowed to appear in particularly dangerous places. So you can rest assured in this regard. In a short time, there will be no what's the problem? Besides, after we finish eating, we can go our separate ways. What does parting ways mean? It's just to act separately, Luogu said. The smell of bounty on you is too strong. I'm afraid that I won't be able to bear it anymore and exchange you for money. So, it's better to separate. You are the fruit of my expectation, etc. It's too early to catch you when you grow up to be the Pirate King. Are you saying this again? Now that I have become the Pirate King, I will definitely not let you catch me. Not always. While the two of them were talking, they could already see a gurgling river. Luogu used black balls to disembowel the pig, Luffy lit a fire, and soon the aroma of barbecue began to permeate. Ready to eat? Luffy slobbered all over the place. Luogu gave him a scabbard with a dark face. It just started roasting. Now it's only cooked on the outside, but it's still raw on the inside. Oh, Luffy was extremely disappointed. He squatted on the ground and started to blow on the fire. The bigger the fire, the faster it will bake. The outside will be burnt and the inside will not be cooked. You should learn to be patient. Ah, that's it. Luffy lay on the ground bored and looked at the sky above his head. You are not as hateful as I thought. Can you tell me about your battle with Ace? I can't tell stories, Luogu said, but that battle was not just between Ace and me, but also Blackbeard. I think I've heard of it, but I have no impression of it. A big guy who was originally your brother's subordinate, but he killed his companion and escaped. Oh, Ace said that. Yes, that's him. Luogu briefly explained what happened at that time, and Luffy's eyes lit up. What a pity, I wasn't there, otherwise, I would have been the winner. Luffy didn't know where he derived his confidence. Luogu glanced at him and found that this guy was not blindly arrogant. This confidence actually burst from his bones. It was as if he really thought that he would definitely win. This made Luogu a little dumbfounded. He turned his head and looked between the jungles, his expression slightly pondering. Girl Island, Amazon Lily is really not a good place. He sighed softly. It was a coincidence that Luffy could get the favor of the Empress, but I am afraid that even if he wanted to leave here, it would not be so easy. Let's try first and see if we can get a ship or meet the Empress. He stroked his chin, thinking about it. Pirates' bounty don't run. Pirates' bounty don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 232. Luogu has always heard that Luffy is good at eating. But he didn't expect this guy to be so edible. For a whole wild boar, Luogu only ate one back, and the rest were stuffed into Luffy's stomach. Her belly was so stretched out that her whole figure was severely distorted. No need to guess, this guy's stomach must have turned into an unsightly shape by now. The corner of Luogu's mouth couldn't help twitching at this, and finally sighed, the rubber man is amazing. As far as food is concerned, Luogu feels that apart from that woman who is particularly edible and also very dishonorable, there is probably no one who can compare to this guy, right? As for whether that woman can win, can't there be a big eater competition? In other words, this seems like a very wonderful idea. When Luogu's train of thought was about to go astray, he quickly pulled it back, regained his composure, and then threw aside the clean thigh bone. Okay, we two should go our separate ways. Rogo said. Luffy, who was putting his head into the river to drink water, made a gurgling sound. As for what he said specifically, who knows? Luogu didn't understand what he meant, so he turned around and walked in a random direction. After walking not too far, I heard dense footsteps coming from the jungle, and immediately disappeared, and saw a few hot-tempered women shuttling through the dense forest, as if walking on flat ground. They were already running towards the river in a blink of an eye. Side went. Luffy, who is already full, shouldn't be able to catch him without a fight, right? It's not his character setting to see a woman unable to walk. Luogu muttered a few words in a low voice, then ignored it and headed in the opposite direction of these women. After walking for a while, the eyes suddenly opened up. A specially shaped building appeared in his field of vision. Is it necessary to see the Empress? Luogu was a little entangled, and finally decided not to go to see him. As far as the current situation is concerned, men are definitely not welcome on this island. Mostly Hancock would not care about his identity, he would only care about being a man, and then kill himself, although it is hard to say whether it will succeed, but what if it succeeds? The result won't be particularly wonderful. So the best choice now is to find a way to get a boat and go directly to sea. As long as you leave the windless belt, isn't the dragon returning to the sea? Speaking of which, that guy Seong isn't crying right now, is he? After all, it was not his plan to throw himself here. What would he do if he caught Luffy? Thinking of this, I feel an inexplicable sense of revenge in my heart. The reason for this is because he has no way to avenge this revenge. I can only ponder it in my heart, and I have had a dry addiction. The bear is probably almost gone, right? Luogu sighed softly, turned around and started looking for a boat. Night falls. Luogu sat on the city wall, looking at the vast surrounding world, very melancholy. No boats. No, it's not that there is no boat. There is a boat here, which is towed by two huge sea snakes. It belongs to the big boat of the 9 snake pirates. There was nothing Luogu could do about this ship. Unless there is a smaller ship, then use sea kings. Or something else to get out of the windless zone. And this kind of thing may not exist, but I, an outsider, can't get it at all. Luogu supported the ground with both hands, looked up at the sky above his head, feeling very sad in his heart. Are you really going to meet the Empress? Although the Empress is said to be the most beautiful woman in the world, it is probably impossible for any man to be able to meet such a woman. But Rogu resisted. It's not because the Empress is not beautiful enough, but because this guy's personality is really bad. It may be difficult to reach an agreement with such a person. Or, can we use the mark behind her to find a solution? It seems a bit despicable. Luogu thought for a while, who said that pirate hunters can't be despicable? Besides, it's just to scare her. Anyway, my purpose is just to get a ship, and then leave here safe and sound, so there won't be any trouble. Isn't it too rigid? After all, men are not allowed on this island, and I don't want to stay here. Our interests should be consistent. Thinking of this, Luogu let out a sigh of relief. Go and see. The residence of the Empress is very conspicuous. Standing in the city, one can see the Empress's palace from anywhere. Luogu felt that as long as he was not blind, he could find it easily. Walking along the road, you can still see chaotic crowds, running crazily and crowded. All of them are full of fighting spirit, as if they will not give up until they reach their goals. What did Luffy do? Let these women be so united in their hatred. After this doubt flashed by, Luogu himself laughed. No, as long as a man appears randomly, these women will fight against each other. Women are creatures that can be easily united. He inexplicably remembered the scene of Daisuke and the others drinking on the boat. It seemed that I heard some terrible things that night, and I still feel so embarrassed when I think about it now. Thanks to what they can say. He walked around and looked around, stopping and going. He was invisible and didn't worry about being discovered. But I found that although there are many women here, there are not many really good-looking ones. They are a fighting nation. They have been raised as warriors since birth. Each of them has a rough and wild personality, which is harder to distinguish than a man. Most of them are muscular or burly. It is difficult to find a few beauties who meet Luogu's aesthetics. Come out. Of course, the Empress is different. After Luogu came back to his senses, he was already standing at the gate of the palace. The guards on both sides turned a blind eye to him, and Luogu just walked in calmly. It's so big here. Looking around, another embarrassing thing is, how can he find the Empress? You can't just open a door and ask if the Empress is there, right? Then it was probably taken down before anyone could be found. In the end, I decided to grab someone and ask. Seeing that there were some girls around him, Luogu struggled for a long time and let several go before he finally gritted his teeth and grabbed one. She was dragged to a corner where there was no one there, and she didn't remember to ask before she came, but as soon as she showed up, the girl was dumbfounded, and she was so frightened that she passed out. Before he fell into a coma, he said 2 words, "Monster. I'm still a big brother." Luogu's heels were twitching, and he finally looked at the simple fabric on her body. He was silent for a while and felt that this was not good. His body shape began to change, and he had turned into a girl in a blink of an eye. After changing the girl's clothes and putting some tighter clothes on her, just as she walked out, she heard a voice shouting, "What are you doing here? Your Majesty has been waiting for you for a long time." "What?" Luogu was stunned. "What does this girl do?" "Your Majesty, are you still waiting?" "Bedroom attendant?"